Okay, good evening, everyone. Good morning, and also good afternoon. Um, Thank you very much for coming to the webinar. On behalf of ITA, International Emission Trading Association, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar on Indonesia's carbon market. Thank you all for joining us from different parts of the world. We are very delighted to have a lot of representatives here from the private sector, the government as well, and also financial institutions and project developers. And of course, we are welcome the public also here because it's a public webinar. Welcome, welcome. And today's webinar is about Indonesia's carbon market. We all know that right now Indonesia is entering an important phase in developing its carbon market as the country advances its climate commitments while pursuing sustainable economic growth. Carbon markets are expected to play an increasingly significant role in mobilizing investment, supporting emissions reductions, and creating opportunities for collaboration between domestic and international stakeholders. Today's webinar, we aim to provide the participants here with firsthand insights into Indonesia's latest policy developments and also the future direction of how the carbon market in Indonesia will work. We hope this discussion will contribute to a better understanding of the regulatory landscape from Indonesia, also investment opportunities and potential areas for international cooperation. And before we begin, I would like to briefly go over a few housekeeping notes. The webinar is being recorded right now, and participants are kindly requested to keep their microphones muted throughout the session. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end, so please wait for a bit. And should you have any questions during the session, feel free to submit it through the Q&A section or chat function in your Zoom, and we'll address as many questions as time permits during the discussion session. Also, I almost forget, but I would like to welcome the representative, as you see on my screen, the representative from Ministry of Environment, Dr. Mita or Ibu Mita will be represented by Ibu Ruli, and also Bapak Edo Mahendra from the Ministry of Forestry. We are also joined by Nadia Nair from ACT Group and also BPMI co-chair, and also Fulia Aydin from Shell, Ines Melendez from Woodside Energy, Ling Min Hoon from Gen Zero, and also Javier Santoyo from Biocarbon Standard, and last but not least, Irfan Nurhadi from Vera. And we would like to welcome, I think for the first speaker, Bjorn Fonden, who will give the opening remarks for this webinar today. Bjorn, time is yours. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Bu Kim, and welcome everyone to this webinar. It is indeed a pleasure to host this at such an important juncture in Indonesia's carbon markets. Now, before we start, if we can go to the next slide, Kim, I just want to briefly share a bit about the background of AITA and our engagements in Indonesia. I believe most of the people on this webinar will be aware that AITA represents the International Emissions Trading Association. We were founded already in 1999, more than 27 years ago, and we now have 300 business members representing the entire carbon market landscape. And our mission is really to empower the private sector to engage in climate action by supporting the establishment of effective market-based trading systems. So that includes voluntary carbon markets, domestic compliance systems, as well as international carbon markets, such as those under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, to make net zero possible. And on the next slide, we have just a few of our 300 plus business members. So this really represents the entire landscape, including many of the investors that will also join us here at the webinar today from around the world. And on the next slide, we can see that international carbon markets are evolving rapidly. From 2016 to 2026, average carbon prices globally have nearly doubled, ETS and carbon tax revenues have continued to exceed more than $100 billion. And carbon pricing instruments now cover almost 1/3 of global emissions. At the same time, carbon credit markets have stayed relatively strong despite certain headwinds. And we saw an increase in issuances from 2024 to 2025 of carbon credits. And we have also seen increasing engagements under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. On the next slide, we can see some of those developments. And as AITA, we track all the bilateral agreements that have been signed under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement between countries, which now amount to more than 111 bilateral agreements. We also track all the letters of authorization that have been provided to projects to make them eligible for issuing ITMOs and making corresponding adjustments. And importantly, just 2 months ago, we also saw the final transition from the Clean Development Mechanism to the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism under Article 6.4, with more than 450 projects approved globally and around 145 projects that are based in Asia. We also know that CORSIA, as the aviation sector's compliance scheme, is driving significant demand for Article 6 credits, or ITMOs, and more than 37 million credits have now been tagged for the first phase of CORSIA. On the next slide, and that sets the scene for AITA's BPMI, or the Business Partnership for Market Implementation, which we started following up on the Business Partnership for Market Readiness to support dialogues between businesses and governments to build bridges of knowledge across sectors and geographies and scale up market-based instruments worldwide. And this is a collaboration that we work very closely with the World Bank and other partners to identify opportunities by voluntary carbon markets, compliance markets, and Article 6 markets. On the next slide, specifically in Indonesia, we have been engaging very actively since 2023, organizing high-level roundtables, investor discussions, closed-door meetings. We have prepared policy analysis, reports, and recommendations to advance high-integrity markets aligned with international best practice. And in October last year, we signed a memorandum of understanding, which we are very pleased to share with the Ministry of Forestry to collaborate on carbon market operationalization. And I'm sure Paedo will talk more about this later. And following the new presidential regulation that was adopted last year, BPMI has worked towards opening up the market for transactions and scaling up investments in high integrity carbon projects. And as our next priority, we seek to support the effective operationalization of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement in the country to meet growing global demand. So finally, on the next slide, just to highlight some of the key recommendations that we have shared in the past. And this is actually a report that we produced both in English and Bahasa Indonesia last year, but I believe many of the policy recommendations are still relevant for where the market is today. And the first one is clarifying the opportunity to sell, trade, and export non-correspondingly adjusted credits from Indonesia. And I believe we saw the first steps towards delivering on this objective just last month. The second point is to define the role and interactions of the National Carbon Registry and crediting mechanism with independent crediting programs. And we have also seen significant progress on this point. The third, fourth, and fifth is where we believe there's still a lot more work to be done and that we look to support, which is in terms of establishing a clear and transparent process for authorization of Article 6 ITMOs, expanding the scope and the targets of Indonesia's ETS, that is the emissions trading scheme or domestic compliance market to drive demand. And finally, to ensure that all of this is aligned and well supported to Indonesia's new NDC and a long-term low emission development strategy. So I hope we will be able to discuss many of these topics in detail and also hear from investors on the perspectives and their recommendations during the webinar today. And with this, I will hand back over to you, Kim, for the next segment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bjorn, for the overview of ITA's activities in Indonesia and also engagement. We are now very honored to be joined by Edo Mahendra, Principal Advisor to the Minister of Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia. Pak Edo will present about Indonesia's carbon market landscape. Pak Edo, the time is yours.
Thank you, Ibu Kim, all distinguished panelist speakers. I see Bu Ruli here and also other colleagues. Yeah, I see Bu Lingmin and also Ibu Kim, Pak Irfan, Bu Ines, Pak Javier, Bu Nadia, and of course, a good friend of mine, Pak Bjorn. I think I'm just going to go. I know I only have a few minutes. I think in the end of the day, I think this is the first time since we issued, since the 6th and the 9th of July that we issued our legacy projects. And then I think this is the first time I speak basically in public rather than meeting bilaterally or in closed sessions. So I truly appreciate what IETA holding this webinar. So more or less, I would just like to recollect the Indonesia's plan, especially on behalf of the Ministry of Forestry, then on our plan going forward. And I think, as always, I'm going to start with the assets, and then I'm going to go next to the policy landscape, and then going forward, basically short-term and medium-term plan. Also, I would say medium to long-term, yeah, short-term, medium, long-term. So I'm going to start with the asset. I think this one's everyone is familiar with. Indonesia is immense of potential, is immense, full of potentials for the optimization of the economic value of carbon. It is clearly stipulated as the first ministerial implementing regulation of the presidential regulation 110, the ministry regulation number 6, 2026, put the minimum, potential of minimum, which means like there is a huge potential upside that we are targeting for market-based financing. Hence, this includes carbon financing, among others. We also emphasize on the needs for the focus for social forestry and also customary forests that are normally more on the sidelines, but we are currently designing also how we can balance the protection of these groups, and at the same time how they can be upscaled, scaling up the potentials from this normally set aside, which is now being part of the forefront as well by the government. But as you see, as we all know, Indonesia has immense potential, and these are the potential assets going forward. I would say this is the total addressable market potential for Indonesia. Really short term that I would like really short immediate issue that I would like to share with you again. Is related to the legacy jurisdictional. I will talk about the legacy project based later in my presentation, but first I would like to touch upon the legacy jurisdiction result-based financing with excess carbon credits that are available for the market. Indonesia is currently working with Emergent as the representative of Lift Coalition, among others, for the potential sale of the excess credits from the 2019-2020 credits amounting to around a little bit over 4 million tons CO2 equivalent. Which is we're targeting, if it's possible, by the end of Q3, we could put this in the market for voluntary use. Going forward, this is I would also to announce an invitation in this webinar for everyone who is interested to join forces with us in the PECM eligible of the not yet verified results starting from 2021 going forward. I've been talking to several entities interested for this, for compliance use, which of course will also mean it will follow also as a clear example of Article 6 where possible, but this is not yet verified for 2021 going forward until 2024 for the access coverage of the East Kalimantan Legacy FCPF project with the World Bank. We are thinking for this one, we are thinking to transfer the registry from the CATS to TRIS registry. We are in the process. Hopefully, it will happen sooner than later this year. So that's the immediate available, be it for the voluntary use, targeting sooner in terms of timeline, and also for the non-verified that is available for Article 6 from these FCPF legacy projects. Next. I think we are also in the process of revising our concept note to ARC for several provinces. Most of these will be for the HFLD methodologies that will require, again, this is an invitation for potential investors as well. If you're interested with JRED, then by all means, we will resubmit our revised concept note. We may add several other provinces, but we haven't come up with a decision yet. But by 31st of December, I hope I will not spend my New Year's Eve submitting the concept note, the revised concept note. But rest assured that the research is also in multiple layers of strategies for optimizing our market-based climate financing, including for this jurisdiction approach for some of the identified provinces. And we will also be working very closely with the private sector concession holders within these provinces. Should we pursue with these provinces with these jurisdictional approaches? Next. Okay, recent progress. Again, we initiated already minister regulation on the number 6 on the international carbon trading, number 7 on conservation area. We are currently in the final stage for minister regulation number 8. Hopefully this quarter, before the end of this quarter, we will issue that. Also on social forestry, that is the revision of minister regulation number 9. So please wait for it. I think both of these are very important because, as I mentioned, we would like to unlock the potential from the non-traditional set aside sectors for climate financing, for carbon financing, that is the social forestry. And number 8 is related to the optimization of the business process so that we could even accelerate things further. But just as a reminder that the revision of the ministerial regulation number 8, it covers not only environmental services like carbon financing, but also goods like timber and non-timber production as well. But it's really about the business process, which is a thing that is closely related to all the business process in carbon as well. So again, number 6 is on the downstream part. Number 8 is on the upstream until midstream to make sure that the business process will be streamlined. Next. Yeah, I think we can skip this. Minister number 6, but okay. So one of the things that really interesting going forward is we're going to go ahead with our nesting as mandated in our ministerial regulation. It might take over than a year or a year and a half to make sure that this can be done properly. We will look at this very carefully. It will be an inclusive process. Soon we're gonna establish a methodology panel, which will be consisted of the scientists, experts to develop methodologies not only on nesting but also on the operationalization of methodologies for Article 6 deals. A few weeks ago, Ministry of Environment signed an MOU with Singapore's MTI. Those need to be translated by the line ministries. Yeah, so of course for NBS, then the responsibility will fall under the Minister of Forestry to co-develop with the Singapore, maybe NCCS, I don't know, on the whitelist. Yeah. but this also applies to other countries that we are currently exploring to have cooperation partnership for Article 6. So hence we're on EBS because the responsibility lies with the line ministry, hence Minister of Forestry. Then we will soon establish the methodology panel for this nesting, also for methodologies development for Article 6. Next. Okay, yeah, this is it. Soon, I think I think maybe by the end of this month, we will have this issued through ministerial decree. Yeah, for the people we are currently preparing this. So kindly wait, and then we will work very, I would say, efficiently, effectively to make sure that we can deliver clarity on all of those things that Pak Bjorn mentioned, yeah, including methodologies for Article 6. Next. Oh, okay. So basically, again, I mentioned in the beginning on legacy jurisdictional projects, our plan to create an ecosystem where project-based and jurisdiction-based can work together, have different timelines. All these different types have different pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. The issue is really to optimize and balance. So this is our goal. But of course, as you know, on the 6th of July, the Minister of Forestry, Pak Raja Juli, issued the ministerial decrees for four projects, carbon projects. I would say these are legacy projects to show that things are working. We walked the talk and we issued, I think, around 31.7 million tons. I just an hour ago, I just got landed from the airport in Bali to discuss with my colleagues also from Ministry of Finance on the government revenue side of this as well to optimize the formula, making sure it is business friendly at the same time, also giving clarity for future projects in the pipeline. So that's why I'm sorry if I'm a bit tired, but anyway, the projects are there, and also we launched the Indonesia Forestry Carbon Hub, the IFCH, which will be like the hub for the nature NBS carbon projects. People can come. It's a hub, and then ask questions, and then see where the bottlenecks are. And then we will try our best to accelerate and address all these bottlenecks for FOLU carbon projects. So it is located in the Ministry of Forestry, Block 4, second floor. Next. Yeah, of course, we'd like to also mention the collaboration with international partners. Again, Pak Bjorn, you are the lucky number one. Our first MOU is with IETA, and then we have with ICVCM. And I think I'm also happy to inform that ICVCM will come to Indonesia within the next few months. Together with the Ministry of Forestry, we will have a workshop, capacity building on high integrity carbon going forward, high quality, high integrity going. So I think the most important is to create an intellectual epistemic community to make sure that we understand what it means. In the end of the day, it will be a cocktail of policies. We need to understand what it means. So, it's one of the follow-up of the MOU with ICVCM on during the sideline of COP in Sao Paulo with Pak Bjorn. Already did many times roundtables, investor meeting, and the likes. And then the third picture there is with CGCM, Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets. Indonesia is the 11th country, I think, joining. And we are working the issue on market functionality. I think we're there, of course, following with the co-founders of the coalition that is the Singapore, UK, and Kenya. We're happy to be part of that group. We are benefiting from different work streams. IETA is also there as well. So I think we're in the same work stream. And because we need to build an ecosystem, Indonesia is, in my view, through Ministry of Forestry, really benefiting and trying to also be active and learning experience from the CGCM. The fourth one is, no, back. Still the future. That is with the UNEP. So I think I mentioned previously, yeah, that's with UNEP, yeah. that we will have we signed our support, yeah. So we may include Riau province for the, I would say, the eighth province, supported by to go towards the trees methodology. We're currently in discussion with the projects holders there in Riau, so it will be one of the, I would say, pilot. Yeah, I don't like the word pilot, but the example of how to do nesting. So we're doing this very carefully. Both we're working closely with the private sector as well. The final one is, oh, this is the signing last, yeah, just few weeks ago, last month during the in London, yeah, I think with Emergent Leaf Coalition, not only for the access courage but also for many other things going forward. Next. Okay, I would also like to inform that I'm also going to New York for the New York Climate Action Week. Minister of Forestry will hold an event, investor meeting on the 22nd of July in New York. So I'm going to bring some projects under development, which includes this one, Satu Karsa, and also from the private sector, also from social forestry will come with me in that event. I will definitely contact Pak Bjorn. Yeah, I'm sure you're already contacted by my colleague, yeah, Bu Claudia from the CGD, Minister of Forestry, working together with them to hold this event so that members of AETA are invited if you happen to come. If you happen to visit New York Climate Week, so Satu Karsa is another initiative, joint initiative with the Minister of Forestry and OJK, or Indonesia's Financial Services Authority, to basically try to leverage the carbon financing to also support agroforestry and the bankability of the social forestry stakeholders, at the same time potentially to improve their upward social mobility going forward. The focus is twofold: the area of conservation and also the area of social forestry, so that we have the services for the carbon and then the goods from the commodity. So we are targeting around 1 million hectare going forward. But this is we are working now. We will present this in New York Climate Action Week on the assets. Yeah, a couple of hundreds of thousands of potential clean and clear assets in the conservation with, social forestry patches here and there. We would like to have the best project developers to work on this, and the best also to invite financiers and investors to chip in into this project. Next. Okay, I think that is all the update from our side. Again, everyone is invited. The IFCH is currently in construction and everything. We are preparing the infrastructure for that, but it will be, a one-stop solution, not solution, yeah, but people for come and talk. You can talk to me and my team, and there will also people manning the that hub as well from all four related directorate generals, yeah, be it from the PHL or the concessions, large concessions, social forestry, conservation area, also for rehabilitation, which includes mangrove. Yeah, we're also working on mangrove that is within the forestry area. If it's outside, that will be with the Ministry of Fisheries and Maritime, but those inside the forest area will be with the Ministry of Forestry. So we're gonna have all these four people also manning the hub. Yeah, so make sure that everyone that would like to do business in Indonesia for carbon financing could be well served, and we can address all potential bottlenecks and answer all your queries, so that we can accelerate things in a also a prudent way. Also, in addition to that, also the analytical work on the nesting, on the methodologies development for NBS for Article 6, which is besides our responsibility to follow up Minister of Environment stance. Yeah, basically, that is basically what I can share. I think I already ran out of my time. Thank you so much for listening, and of course, I hope I will see many of you on the 22nd of July. Thank you. Over to you, Bukim.
Thank you, Pak Edo. Actually, there's an annex, but I think these slides would be available to the public, right, Pak? So we can share after this webinar to you all. So you are able to read what Pak Edo has explained. Thank you very much, Pak Edo. I think it's a very concise but also very comprehensive in terms of the development of carbon market in Indonesia. Right now, I think we are moving to Ibu Ruli. Let me try to share the screen. Maybe I would check Bu Ruli. Are you here, Bu Ruli?
Yeah, Ibu Kim.
Oh, yeah, Ibu. Yeah, let me.
Can I start to share my screen?
Oh, I will try to share it from my screen book. Let me.
Should be okay now.
Oh, she can share. Okay. Yeah, Bu Ruli, I think you
I
can.
can share. Okay.
Yeah, you can share the screen. Thank you so much,
I
Bu Ruli.
will try to share it in my screen. I hope all of you can see the screen. And sorry for while I'm presenting, I turn off my camera. So
Yeah. Maybe I will introduce Bu Ruli for a bit. So Bu Ruli is right now working for the Minister of Environment, working as the coordinator of National Register System Working Group. So we are very honored to have Bu Ruli here. Especially Bu Ruli is the one who's in charge of making this happen, the SRUP that just launched last month. So the time is yours, Bu Ruli. Bu Ruli, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Kim. So good evening, distinguished panelists and speaker. So thank you very much. It's my pleasure for this opportunity to introduce our Indonesia's carbon registry system of SRUK. Apology from my director, Ibu Mita, that who was supposed to present this presentation. She's still in another meeting, so I will present this presentation on behalf of her. So Pak Edo already told a lot of potential carbon units under Indonesia's carbon pricing framework. So in this opportunity, I will explain how Indonesia has developed a transparent and credible registry system, how it aligns with the Paris Agreement, and why it provides confidence for investors, project developers, and international partners. So from Ministry of Environment side, our responsibility to keep our NDCs under. Sorry. Okay, I will continue. Then so as I also mentioned that we will use that term of a regulatory framework.
I think your voice is missing, Bu Ruli.
Bu Ruli, can you hear us? I think we lost her. Maybe let's just give one more minute and see if she comes back.
Hello, Bu Ruli.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry for
Can
my
hear you.
connection.
No problem.
So sorry. Yeah, I will continue.
Yes.
So I will skip this slide, then I will go with another slide. So everything starts with Presidential Regulation number 110 of 2025. This regulation fundamentally modernized our Indonesian's carbon governance, and it formally recognizes voluntary carbon markets that previously didn't do, and then acknowledge internationally recognized carbon standards. And in this ministerial regulation established SRUK as the national carbon registry, and provides legal certainty for both domestic and international transactions. In other words, Indonesia is no longer treating carbon markets as isolated pilot initiatives, but as part of a national climate policy that supports our national determined contribution, or NDC. And then following the presidential regulation, we have our ministerial regulation of our Minister of Environment. Number 10 of 2026 provides the operational framework for SRUK, System Registry Unit Carbon. It regulates how carbon units are registered, issued, transferred, retired, and monitored. And more importantly, the SRUK, or this ministerial regulation, ensures transparency and traceability, interoperability, and environmental integrity throughout the entire life cycle of carbon unit. So yes, Indonesia's regulatory framework is fully aligned with the Paris Agreement. SRUK supports both Article 6.2 cooperative approach and Article 6.4 crediting mechanism. We put the agreed electronic format of Article 6 into the SRUK. So every international transfer must remain consistent with Indonesia's NDCs. Whenever a carbon unit contributes to another country's NDCs, then we apply the corresponding adjustment to eliminate double counting in the SRUK and in our national registry system. I will show you in the next slide how SRUK and SRN will be connected each other. And then, as Pak Edo already presented also, there are several milestones. I will, so Pak Edo already mentioned that you have cooperation between IETA, and then in July, 6th of July, Indonesia Forestry Carbon Hub officially launched, and then in the 9th of July, we officially launched our SRUK. Yeah. These three milestones demonstrate that Indonesia now is moving from policy development in the previous into our toward practical implementation. So we will look the SRUK system overview. What is SRUK? What is exactly is SRUK? SRUK is our, or Indonesia's, centralized carbon registry. The main objective of SRUK is to become the single source of truth for all carbon units in Indonesia. Rather than having fragmented registries operating independently, in every line ministry, they already have their own information system. The SRUK integrates carbon information into one trusted national platform. So this is particularly important because we believe trust is the foundation of any carbon market. So sorry if the graphics is not quite good. So small font of letters. So basically, this is the general picture of business process that happen in the SRUK. There is a project registration. The SRUK strengthen the role of ministerial or sectoral, because the sectoral have a rule to review the project design document. And then inside the SRUK, we have our national scheme. We call it SPEI, Sertifikasi Pengurangan Emisi GRK Indonesia. So the validation and verification process is happening in the SRUK. And then, so we have also the government approval also happen in the system. So we the system, it will guarantee the integrity of the process to generate the carbon unit. The SRUC will be record all of these things, the carbon unit registration, the carbon unit issuance, the transaction recording, and then the ownership tracking of the carbon unit, retirement, authorization, corresponding adjustment, and double counting prevention, of course. The SRUC will be connected with international carbon registries. We will do it after this August until October, I think. And also the SRUC also have domestic interoperability with our carbon exchange. So for the authorization and corresponding adjustment, the SRUC will be connected, already connected with our national climate registry, national registry. So although SRUC functions as the national registry, the SRUC architecture is decentralized as mandated in our Presidential Regulation 110. It communicates with multiple domestic and international systems, of course. This enables real-time information. Real-time information will be exchanged while maintaining data integrity. So every issuance, transfer, authorization, retirement, and ownership change can be tracked throughout the entire life cycle of a carbon unit. So Indonesia applies several carbon pricing instruments, as you know, and as it's mentioned in the Presidential Regulation. Includes emission trading, and emission offsetting. And for the international, we have international transfers, and of course, performance based payment. This part is still under development in the SRUC. We are ready for the offsetting schemes, the offsetting mechanism, and we are in the process of developing the part of how we document it or how we register the result-based payment. So sorry, yeah. So each category follows different regulatory requirements. Every ministerial will have or will develop their own ministerial regulation regarding these instruments. But it is managed within one integrated registry. And then, so this is the types of carbon units that registered in SRUC. We have SPE-GRK, which is a process in the scheme of SPE that I've already mentioned. And then we have non-SPE-GRK, the internationally certified units recognized under UNFCCC mechanism, verified carbon standard, and other international standard. And the third, we have GHG emission quotas used under Indonesia's emission trading scheme. Several ministerial that responsible for the ETS of the ETS develop their own regulation. These three types of carbon units are already ready to be registered in the SRUK. And then we have this is probably one of the most important thing. Authorization determines whether a carbon unit may be transferred, as we know, internationally for use towards another country's NDCs. This mechanism is implemented in the SRUC and SRN. to protect environmental integrity, and therefore every international transferred carbon units remains fully accountable. Yes, as I mentioned, we put the grid electronic article 6 in the SRUC and also in the SRN, mirroring with the SRN. This is the relationship between SRN and SRUK. We keep the integrated national data ecosystem. So yeah, one country, one accounting, one NDC, and then we implement the Article 6 arrangement of the Paris Agreement. Hopefully, the interoperable between these two systems will be guarantee for the transparency and integrity of our system and our carbon unit. So this is the Indonesia by the President regulation recognizes internationally accepted standards. However, recognition does not mean automatically acceptance. International standards still need to undergo Indonesia's approval process before integration into SRUC. This will ensure consistency with national regulations while maintaining compatibility with international markets. And then for investors, we believe that credibility is essential. So in the SRUC, Indonesia provides first regulatory certainty, and then we provide transparent registry infrastructure. We keep improving the SRUC, we keep strengthening the SRUC and also the SRN, and then the SRUC will be compatible with international standards. And of course, we have significant opportunities, especially in forestry and nature-based solutions that Pak Edo already present. And together, these elements create an enabling environment for long-term climate investment. So this is my last slide. I would like to conclude with one important message. Yes, carbon pricing is not an end itself. It is an instrument. We keep emphasize that carbon pricing is an instrument to accelerate Indonesia's climate ambition. So a credible carbon market must always support the achievement of Indonesia's NDCs while providing confidence to investors and ensuring environmental integrity. So thank you very much. I look forward to our discussion. Back to Ibu Kim. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bu Ruli, for very comprehensive and I think insightful as well for all of us regarding SRUC and how the system works. Thank you very much, Bu Ruli. Now I think I will continue to the next session, the discussion session regarding investor prospects for Indonesia, and it will be moderated by Bjorn. I will try to share the screen for a moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bu Kim. Thank you, Pak Edo. Thank you, Bu Ruli, for providing this overview of the regulatory environment in Indonesia, and congratulations to all the recent progress. So I think now that we heard from the government, we are all very interested to hear from the investors who are deploying capital into carbon projects and considering the opportunities that exist in Indonesia. So we're very delighted to be joined by Fulia Aydin, the country manager for nature-based solutions in Indonesia in Shell, Ines Menderes, who is the international strategy manager at Woodside Energy, and Ling Min Hun, who is the investment director at Gen Zero. So maybe Fulia, I will start with you, and I will ask the same questions to all three of you. So from your perspective as an investor, what makes Indonesia attractive relative to other emerging carbon markets? What types of projects, methodologies, and credits are you mostly looking at? And what policy and regulation are necessary to ensure confidence to scale capital into Indonesian carbon projects? So over to you, Fulya. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Björn and Kim for the invitation. Yeah, my name is Fulya Aydin, and I represent Shell's nature-based solutions business here today, but also want to share Shell's perspective as a global participant in the carbon market, as well as investor in this space. Yeah. So yeah, I think most importantly, I mean, Indonesia is a quite unique place. You know, it has a lot of the ecosystem is quite huge, right? So from forest to peatland to mangroves, and so this creates a unique opportunity to deliver not only the climate impact but also supports the huge biodiversity and also local communities. And so what has been really impressive and encouraging, to Ido mentioned it in his opening remarks as well, but the progress, right, that the country has gone through, strengthening the carbon regulatory framework, right? So the recent developments, including the presidential regulation, the ministerial level regulation, the international Indonesia Forestry Carbon Hub, and also what Ibu Ruli just mentioned in detail, the SR-UK, the SRUK registry. So I would say like all these things, increase clarity and also the confidence for investors that, Indonesia is developing a robust carbon market ecosystem, and I think that's also important for us in particular as an investor. So it's a combination, Björn, of the scale that Indonesia has in terms of like their natural assets. Also the improving infrastructure, in terms of the regulatory framework, that I think makes it very effective. Of course, we need to see that this gets all nicely implemented and continues to remain like that as well, right? Because you want to have that continuity as well. To have the confidence. I think those are the points that are important for us, Björn.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Fulya. Maybe Ines, if I may, over to you. Thanks for joining us early in the morning in Canada. And I would ask the same question. So please, over to you.
Thanks, Björn and Tim and Ada for the invitation and fellow panelists. Look, it's a great opportunity, and as you mentioned, Björn, initially to be discussing investment opportunities at this point in time for Indonesia. I think is what has been happening and demonstrated that has been evolving over the last year is quite impressive. From a Woodside point of view, I won't repeat much of what Fulya already said. We share sentiments as investor in the voluntary carbon market, and that's what our main interest sits on Indonesia right now. Is the ability to make investment decisions in the long term is kind of what sits at the forefront. Investments in the nature-based solution space in the BCM are multi-years investments. And we look not only at the project level in quality and integrity, but also at the ability of that project to be developed in a jurisdiction that has stability and has clarity in the way that it can operate in the long term. Clearly, Indonesia has recently been able to demonstrate those two. Not only it has the potential for project implementation and scale, nature, diversity, but it also has demonstrated the possibility that the implementation of legislation is now in front of us. It's not only the development of policy, but also now moving into a more operational phase that still needs tightening and details to be adjusted, but it's clearly moving into the right direction. And that is giving us confidence and give investor a lot of confidence that the direction of travel is really the right one, and it could potentially become a sophisticated market, pioneer in the region, that not only allow for incorporate integrity in the design and in the legislation frameworks, but also thinks about interoperability with different markets and consider the BCM part of the bigger picture. So it is very exciting to be looking at the potential for investment in Indonesia and give the investors that long-term view that we could confidently deploy capital in a secure manner over the long term.
Great. Thank you so much, Ines. And Lingmin, turning to you and Gen Zero, I mean, you are a large investment platform set up initially by a $5 billion backing by Temasek here in Singapore. And I think you are actively investing both in carbon market enablers as well as projects and project developers. So how do you see the developments in Indonesia and the prospects for future investments in the market?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bjorn, for the invitation. It's truly a delight to be here with all of you tonight. And I want to, of course, repeat a lot of the excellent points that both Fuya and Ines have already mentioned. And I think from a sheer skill and opportunity set perspective, Indonesia presents so much potential, both from an unmatched natural capital potential and also just with the regulatory progress that we've seen in Presidential Regulation 110, and of course, all of the improvements that both Pak Edo and Ibu Ruli has talked about. But I did want to also compliment kind of the progress that the Indonesia has made in terms of the policy and regulatory front. And one of the points that Ibu Ruli mentioned around regulatory clarity and certainty really resonated with us as long-term investors, and these projects are as long as 40 years or more. So having that consistency of regulatory framework over time is super important. With the Presidential Regulation, we're already seeing a lot of great moves forward in terms of interoperability and international fungibility. And I'm really looking forward to see further developments, I think beyond, as you mentioned as well, on the Article 6 front, in terms of having greater guidance and also clearer criteria around eligible project types. For instance, the MOU with Singapore that was signed last month was a very strong signal of intent and very encouraging. And so we hope that will really help to accelerate the momentum and moving towards the operationalization of Article 6 and really help to unlock demand from other compliance markets as well. So I'm very heartened to hear Pak Edo mentioned around sort of the establishment of the methodologies experts panel for Article 6 methodologies, whitelist and development. So I think that will give a lot of clarity to the market. The other aspect as investor, as we're looking at Indonesia vis-a-vis various other geographies, is also how the evolving regulatory framework would intersect with some of other Indonesia's domestic carbon pricing policies, especially with the ETS expansion that's planned for 2028. In addition to having clarity around the design and sectoral coverage, I think it's also important to understand sort of the mechanisms around how credits from domestic projects would be used towards ETS compliance and whether there will be proportion that's ring-fenced towards domestic use or what's the supply that's available for international trading. So I think all of this will give international investors like ourselves greater clarity on how do we size the opportunity set and the potential supply that's available in the international market. And I think also in one of the earlier sessions in the presentations, we also spoke about certain different project types that might be intersecting across ministries. So I think that's, and this is very symptomatic of various different project types. As example, in mangroves, of course, that can span across forestry and fisheries and maritime interministerial coordination, and having some of this policy consistency across ministries for different land types that can have cross different jurisdictions will also be very important for investors because it gives clarity on the legality of land and carbon rights. And that extends also, I guess, not towards just mangroves projects, but even within ARR project types. If there are certain land types like APL, which could potentially fall outside the purview of forestry, and then you might need supplementary regulations to be developed across the relevant ministries. So again, I think that the huge potential that's been outlined by Paedo, we have 12 million hectares of degraded lands for restoration. So having clarity around zoning and the area mapping of where are the unencumbered land areas, clarity of land titles, especially when there are communities residing on the lands or within national parks. I think all these are very important considerations for investors as we look at future opportunities. And all in all, I do say that there's a lot of opportunities. And then one of the aspects that, Bjorn, you raised as one of the questions around the attractive project types, if I may kind of just offer some perspectives here, as we also look at various project types across different geographies. Indonesia is truly unique because of the mangroves and peats ecosystem. They are excellent carbon sinks. At the same time, some of these project types comes with its own challenges that we also have to overcome. So as an investor, we are always looking at a combination of different project types and approaches, right? Which is why we need to do both reductions and removals. And we also need to balance across different dimensions. Are you looking for scale? Are you looking for cost effectiveness? Are you solving for time horizons? And at the same time, integrity metrics are guided by things like CCP eligibility and ratings. So then if we look at scalability and potentially cost effectiveness, peats projects as well as potentially projects like IFM could offer that scalability and the near-term sizable volumes and potential for large contiguous areas via concessions. However, conversely, these methodologies are at times not CCP eligible, which could potentially limit demand pool, right, depending on the buyer's preferences. And I find that in this regard, it's excellent that there's a lot of work ongoing also by the registries, including folks like Vera, to develop new and revised peat methodologies that could also help to align our some standards towards the meta standards like the CCP eligibility. And then on the other hand, you have project types like mangroves and AR, which again are wonderful projects, mangroves from carbon sink perspective, but the land areas is a lot tougher for both mangroves and AR project types to come across large contiguous land areas. They're often fragmented and could also have variable outcomes in terms of survival and growth rates, depending on the soil conditions and the climatic conditions. So at the same time, they also tend to command potentially stronger demand from buyers because of the potential as removals and also with co-benefits in terms of livelihoods enhancement. And at the same time, because of the need to aggregate more fragmented land holdings, that comes with operational and execution complexities and involve aggregation. Which is why I do think that a combination of the different project types and the ability to invest across time as these different project types come to bearing, because they do have different emissions reductions profile and removals generation potential. And so that's kind of the approach that we are taking. And we do need some developments in terms of the methodologies front as well, so that we get greater alignment into a meta quality standards around CCP eligibility and also better ratings for the projects.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lingmin, and we'll hear from Vera soon. And I think this helps a lot also considering we have more than, I think, 150 people on the call, many of them developers. I see Worldview, Rubicon, Volkswagen Climate Partners, UNEP, Sumitomo, Petronas, Standard Chartered. I'm not going to list all of you, but we see you. And thanks for joining. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. And maybe just Fulia or Ines, I want to give you another opportunity if there's anything brief you want to add from your perspective in terms of like what you're looking for as investors and or any questions or recommendations you have for the ministries before we move to the next segment. Fulia, you.
Yeah, no, I think most of it was already shared, Björn. I just want to highlight, because what Lingming said, these are long-term investments, right? So having that certainty and longevity, right, of those regulations and so on. I think that's quite key, right? You don't want to have changes along those 30+ year investments. I think that's quite key for us as investors as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Ines?
Sure, Pierre. I guess one element that is quite critical and is the contextualization of safeguard mechanisms in each region. And I think Indonesia has a great opportunity right now to maybe incorporate some of, give more clarity of those safeguards at the policy level. Expect that they know the community's ways, and they could be a little bit more specifics and give us guidance on how community sharing benefits should work, engagement procedures should apply, and not only guided by international principles, but also guided by local context, which is really relevant on these areas. I think that's a really great opportunity that the Indonesian government has right now in front of them to incorporate in the policy design and in the implementation phase.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And with this, I will hand back to Kim, and we'll move to the next segment, looking at some of the carbon crediting standards and infrastructure underlying this before we move to the Q&A. So Kim, back to you.
Thank you very much, Björn, Fulia, and also Ines and Lingmin as well for the insightful discussion. And I think we learned a lot from the investors just now, how their view on our growing market, carbon market in Indonesia. Right now, we are moving actually to the last discussion. After this, there's going to be Q&A session for the public. For your information, actually, there's questions that have been coming up on the chat section on Zoom. So I think everyone, the participants, is very excited and also joining this webinar. I will try to move to our next discussion. Is Irfan here from Vera?
Yep.
Okay. I think I have some problem with my screen. Wait for a moment. Okay. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Yeah, so Irfan is Deputy Representative Asia and the Pacific from Vera. Actually, the discussion today will try to answer some of the questions that have been, let me try to share my screen again. Okay. Okay, so right now, I think we'll start with Vera.
Okay.
Yes, so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Kim. Thank you, Bjorn. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone around the world. Also, it is a privilege to share the virtual stage with distinguished panelists, especially Pa Edo and also Buruli, which I'm also continuing coordinating on, as everyone mentioned, is not only about the framework establishment, but also to do the implementations. So I'm Irfan, I'm representing Vera. So yeah, I'm based in Jakarta. So basically anything that would be related to Indonesian projects and under Vera, you can feel free to reach me out. And then what I'm gonna do is basically presenting what Vera is doing, and we'll keep doing it to answering, actually already being asked to some panelists as well, and as well as the questions from the participant, how to strengthening carbon standard infrastructure in Indonesia coming from international carbon standard. So please, Bu Kim. Next slide. Just want to give you a very friendly reminder that Vera is a carbon leading standard. It works globally around the world. So we are only responsible for VCI's carbon, which we are famous with. but also we do have several programs actually under Vera. Of course, the first one is the VCS, the one that everybody is talking about, but also we do have CCB and also SD Vista, which is often treated as the additional label for the VCS. But other than that, as also being mentioned that we by on the jurisdictional and nested right plus program, we also have the program that are focusing on that, as well as the plastic waste reduction standard that we also have, and also the scope 3 standard we are setting up in the next couple of weeks, that we will announcing it at the first stage or the pilot phase of the scope 3 standard. And then next, please, Bukim. So we are continuing our works to do so. In Vera, we still believe the carbon credit mechanism is the few or even one of the most effective at addressing two concerns at the same time, which is emission reduction as well as bringing capital or investment to do that. So and then we are also keeping our works to have more impact as big as we can. So as you can see, the number that we have at the moment right now, we do have more than 4,000 projects around 110 plus countries around the world, and then we already issued more than 1.4 billion carbon credits. It's showing us the impact that VCS only already up until today. And then also we do have also at the same time addressing some concern from the market, which is the always been called integrity. And then as you can see here, we do have now active methodology more than 100, and with more than 12, it is a CCP label by ICVC, meaning it is meet the integrity criteria, meaning it's also answering, I think, a question or a concern from Lingmin about the integrity. We do try our best to meet the integrity criteria, and here meaning the being CCP labeled by ICVCM. And we do also our best to work with all the related stakeholders, because we know that the carbon markets, it cannot be done alone by us to set up the requirement and also to project program, but also with the government, which increasingly playing a huge role on this space. So as you can see, we do have 11 MOU or MRC with the government and institution. And also to support the compliance right now, up until today, we do have more than 32 million credit tech Corsia. This is also something that we are going to talk about in the later slide. That basically, Vera not only see VCM is a standalone market, but we do have a few on the converging between compliance and voluntary market. So we do not see as a competition, but we do, it's more like the same different product, but like going into the same purpose. Yeah, okay, next. So I do have, I think, three main questions that should be discussed in this panel. So the first one is how we, Vera, as a carbon standard, help or assist Indonesian market to strengthening the carbon standard and infrastructure in the region. So I'll take a look into two different perspectives. Or sure, the first one is, of course, the one that we already mentioned by Pak Edo Buruli, which is the framework. The framework is already there, basically, and also it's been accepted or by the investor, that it is clear already. So I just want to reiterate that, yeah, there is presidential regulation number 10110, and also it is being supported in the forestry on the implementation side with the ministerial regulation number 6 that just released last month. And to do that, so I want to point out the second point, which is the implementation of the framework. This is something that we are ongoing joint collaboration with the Edo, Buruli, and all of the team from the ministries related. And we do have succeeded the first, at least the Edo call it as the legitimacy project, or the first batch of project, which is 3 of them is under VCS project. You can take a look at that. Means it reflects that not only the framework, but also the project is at least 3 of them under Vera is already fulfill the regulatory requirement that stated in the regulatory framework that mentioned above. And also we are keep continuing our works to not only stopping here for sure, but we also want to do what would be next. And also this is something that I keep coordinating with the Edo, Ministry of Forestry, Ministry of Environment on doing that. Meanwhile, of course, giving the more like flowing works that more clear in a way that it's not giving any confusion on, especially for the new projects in Indonesia that want to be registered under VCS. Yep. And then the second concern, of course, on the infrastructure. Please next, Bukim. And then, of course, again, there's two perspectives of this. The first one is on the infrastructure standard, is on the framework itself. It's been mentioned by Buruli very clearly that there is already ministerial regulate about this particular, and it allows public. It is in the interoperability. It's allowed with the international standard. Basically, it's open for FERA, for VCS to be interoperability with the SHRUC. And the second one, of course, how do we implement that? This is also something that, because it is just released a couple of weeks ago, so I'm in the full coordination with the Buruli and the team on how we're gonna do this, because as you can see in the Buruli slide on the right part of Buruli flowing chart, that would be the data exchange that need to be done between international government market and SHRUC system. And this is something very technical that I should address with my technical team as well. Of course, this is something that we're gonna do next, but it is give the signal that everything is moving on to the investment side. So yes, the regulation, the framework is there. Now we're gonna do, and we are doing the implementation work with the Ministry of Environment in this case, as well as with the Comra. And then the third one, it is something that I think the last point that I should mention, because also it is something that being asked by Bukim, and how we, suggest like giving the signal or giving some point that need to be maybe addressed, or maybe it is something important to be considered for investment side, looking on the evolving carbon standard infrastructure in Indonesia. So there are 2 points that I want to raise in this event. Like first is integrity, because this is everybody is asking and discussing about integrity. FERA, as we try to do that, and not only just discussing, but we try to make everything workable, and meaning as we want to do the labeling, like for this case for integrity, like with the ICVCM. Right now, as I mentioned, there are 12 plus, which one of them is going to be used with by the Satu Karsa project that being mentioned by Edo, and that's for external effort. But for internally, if you can see, now we are also evolving as a standard. Right now, we're going to do transition into VCN 5.0, for example, that would be effective on the next year for January 1st, as well as maybe you can see there is a new generation of registry which addressing some content that already being sent to us, like the interface that should be more easy, and etc. And then as well as some tools that addressing the part of being or meeting the integrity criteria. For example, the NPRT tool, which address the risks that should be addressed, and then should be calculated, and then should be addressed in the PDD. That's the thing that we've done externally and internally to meet the integrity. We do our best, and then basically now how to we implement and make it works. And then the second point is the compliant market and convergence. So again, as we see, it's not something that competing each other. In FERA, we see this is like just 2 different tools, but actually aiming the same purpose. So that's why if you can take a look at our website, FERA published just last April on the documents for labeling for Article 6 and Corsia. So meaning that we are opening the chance or an opportunity using VCU as a government credit, also VCS as a program, to be joined, the effort to be joined with the compliance market. So, and then this is like you can take a look at how we do that. Also the label, this is the NDC label, like non-NDC label there. that basically we can work and use VCU for compliant market. Meaning we don't see this as competing tools, competing instrument, but we more seeing as how we do complement each other, and that's why we have and publish this guidance. And hopefully, this guidance also will give the host country in particular the clarity on how to do that, how to collaborate the implement the VCM into compliance space, because again, we do see it's a converging step at the moment. I think that's it. Sorry if I do take more than the time that I should. Bukim, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Irfan, for the explanation. I think, yes, there are actually 3 questions that were meant to be asked here, but Irfan has answered it all, I think, especially highlighting the regulation that also has been mentioned by Edo and Buruli as well. And I think it's interesting as well that there's this VCS 5.0 that will be launched next year, and mentioning that it will make sure the social and environmental safeguards. I think that's also answering one of the I would say remarks from the investor just now. I think the previous session. Thank you very much, Irfan, for that. We are moving on to Javier Santoyo from. So he is the Strategic Affairs and Expansion Lead of Biocarbon Standard. Javier, are you here?
I am. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, or afternoon, or even morning to everyone, depending where you are. And
Thank you so much for joining us from Ireland.
Yes. Well, at the moment in Scotland for work,
okay.
but
Okay.
yeah, from a very rainy and cold day today, even though it is summer. But yeah, thank you, ITA team, for organizing and inviting us to this webinar, which is, as it's been discussed already today, is in a key turning point in the carbon markets in general. But in the Indonesian context in particular, and following on that, thank you, Paquedo and Buruli, for giving us the full picture and the latest insights, and for you, Bukim, and for hosting this session, and my co-panelist, Irfan. Thank you for your perspectives. So I am Javier. I'm in charge of the strategic affairs and global expansion at Biocarbon, and normally based in Ireland, although I am in Scotland today. And yeah, we are currently, as been discussed today, we are all witnessing a pivotal shift in Indonesia with presidential regulation 110 and 25. Yeah, the market is moving basically from a period of uncertainty into a more clear structure regulatory environment. And what that means for developers and investors is this isn't just more regulation as a burden. So it is a signal that Indonesia is professionalizing the carbon markets and even starting to consider them as a financial asset class. From my perspective, I won't repeat everything that Ivan has said from the perspective of a well-known from Berra, from a well-known global international standard. From the perspective from Biocarbon, I want to talk more in detail about how our standard specifically plugs into this new ecosystem that is being formed, and why we are looking beyond simple carbon reduction to value nature's broader contributions or ecosystem services, specifically through biodiversity and water. If you can go to the second, sorry, the third slide, please. Yeah, I know. The third.
Is this one or the next one?
No, it's the third slide.
Oh, sorry.
It doesn't matter if you can,
Is
but
this the one or
the one, no, that's the second last. So
let me try. This is not
that
this one.
that one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I won't try to repeat or emphasize more on what has been discussed during the previous sessions and what Irfan has outlined very well. But yeah, to give our perspective on about biocarbon in the Indonesian context. So the biocarbon standard was built to serve all different sectors in the carbon markets, both mandatory and voluntary. But as our own name indicates, the bio in biocarbon, we have an emphasis on nature-based solutions. In Indonesia, where we have has been discussed today, vast opportunities, for example, in forestry, blue carbon with mangroves conservation and restoration, and also peatlands conservation and restoration. Like that's the reason why I'm in Scotland for a peatlands project. But also regenerative agriculture or soil carbon or even biochar, which arguably is not strictly NBS, but it is intrinsically linked to soil amendment and therefore to AFOLU projects or methodologies for AFOLU. Specifically, our methodologies are aesthetically fit for this potential. And the presidential new presidential regulation, also some of the old friction has been, particularly the one requiring bilateral mutual recognition agreement, has been now removed, and we now operate on a model of more technical alignment. Yeah, which means that our standards or standards that are already ICROA endorsed or its successor, now we are ICBCM approved at the program level, can be utilized by projects that clear the necessary sectorial ministerial approvals, but then have to be get those approvals, of course. Critically, we are in Indonesia with all these new developments. We are going to be bypassing that manual reconciliation bottleneck. In our case, with our registry, it is synced directly with the climate action data, so the CAT trust. And this is vital because it allows credits certified under our standard, but to be seamlessly verified and fed into the Indonesia's SRUC registry. And for developers, this means significantly reduce administrative friction and a much faster path to market. But furthermore, we are also with Indonesia as the first country to be part of the G20-backed carbon credit data model pilot launched in March 2026. And this pilot managed by the Climate Data Steering Committee and framework integrates with Indonesia's national carbon registry system, the SRUC, to improve transparency and standardize carbon project data, further ensuring transparency, interoperability, and SRUC integration. If you can move to the next slide, please, Bokim. Yeah, so for investors, particularly on this webinar, I want to highlight the core advantages of this alignment from our perspective, again, from the perspective of biocarbon. So integrity, because we are aligned with that's the first classification, where we are aligned with the core carbon principles. Projects on our standard are up to the threshold that is going to be required by the IDX carbon exchange in the Indonesian carbon exchange. This will lower your regulatory and reputational risk immediately. And the double counting issue we are addressing by using blockchain-backed integration with the CAT, with the Climate Action Data Trust, which provides that capabilities needed to connect with the SRUC, and we mitigate that double counting risk that is historically has haunted the voluntary carbon market and still haunts us. Because when an asset is registered in our registry, can be retired across the entire ecosystem. And capital efficiency, because we are enabling a model where domestic entities can acquire compliant international assets and trade them on local exchanges, and the other way around. So this is the liquidity that will truly scale the Indonesian market. We can please move to the next slide. And now, yeah, like again, that is because of the biocarbon, and we have been for a decade traditionally since our foundation a decade ago, we've been focusing on nature-based solutions, or we've been thinking beyond carbon, not only on the social dimension, but also on the environmental dimension. And so I want to challenge us to look then at the next wave of the market. We are all familiar with the demand of carbon and how 2026 has been a turning point, and finally it seems the conditions are being created for the carbon markets to scale. But the real premium and the real impact obviously lies in the stacked environmental assets. First, biodiversity. Biodiversity is not an ecosystem services, obviously, but we can be seen as the ultimate measure for ecosystem health, obviously. Biocarbon, with our biodiversity standard, we emphasize that we are not only about carbon. As the standard setter, we also have this program for biodiversity. In Indonesia, this means that carbon projects have sometimes struggled to prove their social and ecological impact as co-benefits, and the BBS, the Biocarbon Biodiversity Standard, changes this by issuing standalone high-integrity biocredits. And if you are protecting, for example, a habitat for the Sumatran tiger or the Bornean orangutan, you can now generate dual income streams for carbon credits and for the climate impact, and for biocredits for the biodiversity resilience, and they can be stacked. And second, water. Water as a very key, and we are having a serious drought at the moment in Europe. So it's very on the news at the moment. The water is a key ecosystem service that has been undervalued, underpriced. So that's why we have also introduced the biocarbon water standard, the BWS, which and in the Indonesian context, for example, we think about the peatlands. Like, again, the reason why I'm here in Scotland is another country, a smaller scale, but where peatlands are very important. That in Indonesia, they are not only phenomenal carbon sinks, but they are essentially giant water reservoirs. Currently, despite being critically important in Indonesia and a critically important ecosystem service, hydrological stewardship is often underpriced, or is just tagged as a co-benefit. With the BWS, we are allowing developers to treat water conservation, aquifer recharge, and watershed quality as a tradable asset. So investors will no longer need to rely on carbon alone. They can also invest directly in the water security of the different regions on different islands in the archipelago of Indonesia. And the last, please, the last slide. Booking, please. Just a very quick conclusion, because I think I'm coming to the end of my time to conclude. So as the foundations that we are seeing for the high integrity carbon markets infrastructure in Indonesia are being launched and built, and the regulatory bottlenecks that once slowed us down, all the carbon markets are being addressed by standardized digital and transparent pathways. I want to give this final message. So don't view these standards as about the biocarbon standards as a way to issue carbon credits. So view them as a way to quantify the true value of Indonesia's natural capital, or its nature infrastructure, its water, its biodiversity, its carbon absorbing landscapes. And we are ready to support project developers who are looking to move beyond basic carbon offsets and towards these high value, high integrity assets. And thank you all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Javier, for the presentation. I think it is very eye-opening as well for some of the carbon developers who are joining us today, as you have the water and also biodiversity credits. And thank you so much for that. I think it also already answered the main three questions that I've given before the session as well. Thank you. And then maybe if after this, we will give this presentation, and maybe you can put your contact or email that anyone can contact you if they have more questions.
Of course, very happy to.
Thank you so much. And then now we are moving to the Q&A session, because we are also running out of time, but we still have about 30 minutes-ish, 25 minutes. And we do receive many questions right now, but thank you also, Buruli. And I think there are also some answers that have been answered. There are also some questions from to the governments, to the Ministry of Environment, and also to the Ministry of Forestry. Thank you for answering that. But I think Bjorn will lead the Q&A session, and you may have the floor, Bjorn. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, and for the active engagement in the Q&A segment. So we really wanted to give enough time for people to ask the questions, and we really appreciate Buruli already writing several responses, I think, here in the chat. So one of the themes that we are starting to see in the questions coming through is around sectoral pathways, approvals, and authorization for Article 6 projects. At the same time, we also see a growing demand for CORSIA eligible credits, especially for phase 1, which requires both following approved methodologies by the ICAO technical advisory body, as well as authorization and corresponding adjustments done by the Indonesian government. So maybe to Pak Edo first and Buruli both, how do you view this opportunity, and when do you think we could see the first Article 6 ITMOs coming out of Indonesia?
I think, thank you, Pak Bjorn. Buruli is more appropriate to answer the Article 6, yeah, because the umbrella will be under the Minister of Environment's regulation. The Permen, ministerial decree or the ministerial regulation will be under the Ministry of Environment. But then again, the responsibility from the line ministry, sorry, from the Ministry of Forestry, is to do the maths, to do to run the numbers, and see. We have, that's why we establish our methodology panel very soon, hopefully by the end of this month, which will also include safeguards. I think Ibu Ines mentioned about safeguards and several others. There will also work stream on safeguards to look into that as well. So that also answers that question. In the other day, we have received, Minister of Forestry have received many interest requests related to the Article 6. So we will focus on running the numbers. Number one, identify the assets. Number two, running the numbers. So I think once we get that, then we know how much we can recommend for Article 6, and and we devise our strategy on how to optimize Article 6 to be able to both unlock the potential of climate financing, and especially above all, so that it can help Article 6 to reach our domestic national targets, while at the same time also assisting the world so that we can really make common but differentiated responsibility a reality with Indonesia co-leading.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fido. Buruli, do you want to respond from Ministry of Environment?
Oh yeah, thank you for the questions. I only want to add from Pak Edo have. Okay, I will start my video, but so sorry for my bad connection. So yeah, we are in the middle of coordinating to develop the national carbon trading roadmap that intended to establish a long-term framework for developing Indonesia's domestic carbon market while ensuring that carbon market activities remain fully consistent with Indonesia's NDCs and national climate priorities. At the same time, CORSIA, we already have discussion with CORSIA through the Ministry of Transportation. And looking ahead, we believe that I also add some more information. We are in the middle of developing the ministerial regulation regarding the Article 6 and everything that relate into it. So we hope that this arrangement can serve as a bridge between domestic and international carbon markets. We will, through our arrangement of Article 6, Indonesia can participate in international carbon transactions while, of course, maintaining our integrity through government authorization. Our objective is not simply to increase the supply of carbon credits, whether it is to ensure that the carbon market development support Indonesia's NDC while also creating opportunities to mobilize international climate finance and attract investment into high quality mitigation project, of course. So in this context, the national carbon trading roadmap that under development, the CORSIA opportunity, and of course the implementation of Article 6 should be viewed as complementary components of one integrated carbon market ecosystem. That's from my point of view, Pak Bjorn. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Buruli. We also received some other questions relating to what you mentioned in terms of the review by Edo, I think, around the potential change in the fee structures and non-tax state revenue, both for voluntary carbon credits and if there's any fee for authorization under Article 6 for ITMOs. And if credits can or must be traded on Indonesia Stock Exchange. Could you shed some light on the current thinking around these 2 or 3 questions? Maybe Paido again first, and I will invite Buruli later.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Pak Bjorn. But before I answer those 3 questions, I think there are also some questions that are in the chat boxes. I just realized now I didn't check that I think I may need to answer as well about the pipeline, relevant pipelines and everything. Let's say, because I mean, Minister of Forestry working very closely with the relevant pipelines. So far, we've been working very closely with Vera and Plan Vivo. Hence, it also answers the Plan Vivo question. We're working very closely with Plan Vivo, also the Plan Vivo headquarter as well. And of the 4 projects that were given the ministerial decree on the 6th of July and recorded on the stroke on the 9th of July, 3 of those are Vera and 1 was actually from Plan Vivo. And we are working for pipelines for both. Minister of Forestry is also working with other registries for their projects very closely, so that, and then in terms of the alignment with the stroke, then this registry work closely with Ibu Ruli and her team with the Stroke Ministry of Environment. Now, going to your question about the non-tax revenue, the so-called PNBP. For the legacy projects that were issued on the 6th of July, it's still using the old rule as the basis. But we are currently, again, I told you, I just landed 45 minutes before this meeting, just landed from Bali in a meeting with also Ministry of Finance on exactly this topic. We are currently mulling several approaches, and we're also involving the private sectors, the business associations going forward for this future. There are several options. I think maybe some of you already heard about this. Could be like checking the arm's length principle. It could also be using benchmarking. It could also, if you develop some sort of value-added levy type of formulation. Or there are so many things that are currently under consideration because I'm also a member of the National Steering Committee. So we are looking into that. And Minister of Finance is currently co-leading together with the steering committee for dedicated specific government regulation on this non-tax revenue or PNBP. Because so far it's only from the Ministry of Forestry and Ministry of Environment legacy rules from the previous administration that are present. Going forward, we're going to need to also look into other sectors as well. So there is a harmonization synergy effort currently being coordinated by the steering committee together with the Ministry of Finance for the one government regulation. I cannot say about the timeline for now, but we're working very prudently and also very efficiently to make sure that the process is accelerated. Now, the second question related to the Article 6 fee. Of course, Buruli can also chip in because it relates with the Ministry of Environment, but I can safely say that there will be, I would say, the word I like to mention about this is CA premium, the premium for having a corresponding adjustment. That is my way of saying it, but I'm pretty sure the philosophy, and there is already an agreement that there will be something like that, some sort of CA premium. How much and everything, the details, it will be, I think Buruli is more appropriate to explain, but I think it's still in a ongoing, work in progress. But of course, Buruli can feel free if you want to add. Final thing about the stock exchange, there hasn't been any firm decision whether, how to, whether it will be an obligation or those kind of things. But rest assured that the government will not introduce regulations that are, actually debilitating or punishing the market mechanism. But we really want to make sure that the fragmentation of global carbon market, Indonesia can help to actually ameliorate such fragmentation. So that's why we want to open discussion with many of our partners as well going forward. Like Singapore and other countries as well, to see how we can work together on this. Again, I think we believe that there is a balance somewhere to make sure that we can grow this global carbon market. Indonesia could be a centerpiece for that. That's why we are not in a rush, make a reckless decision on whether to make this obligation or not. We are currently elaborating, exploring all issues to make sure that whatever decision that will be taken by the government of Indonesia will actually help to reduce, to ameliorate the global carbon market fragmentation. So we're going to have a more, I would say, smooth, less fragmented carbon market going forward, and also more efficient carbon price formation discovery as well. We'll see. But again, Indonesia is part of this. And every day, again, we were also part of the coalition. We also look into how to de-risk projects, making sure, again, long-term. So we're also talking with Minister of Forestry, talking with insurances and ratings. Again, some people come to me say, Pak Edo, please make sure that the ratings are obligation. It's not yet, but again, all things that reduce information asymmetries, reduce transaction costs, reduce search costs, those are good things. We just need to make sure that whatever decisions that government is taking, including from government of Indonesia, would actually spur the market to work instead of producing unintended perverse impact, which may or may not happen. Sometimes that's why we have to think about this very carefully and talk with our like-minded partners leading this sphere to build the global carbon market.
Thank you. Thanks, Paido. So, Buruli, unless you want to add something, I think maybe he covered the question. We can move Kim to the next one.
Yeah, just so you know, Pak Bjorn. So currently the government regulation number 36 of 2024 provides for non-tax state revenue charged on two types of services. Is on the issuance of SPEGRK certificates, and the second is a levy of 10% on the value of environmental service transactions, including carbon trading transaction. But the government is presently reviewing this regulation. An academic assessment is underway to evaluate the future non-tax state revenue or PNBP framework and ensure that it will support the development of an effective and internationally competitive carbon market, including the Paido mentioned that corresponding adjustment, while we will remaining consistent with Indonesia's regulatory objectives. That's from me, Pak. Thank you.
Thank you, Buruli. Bjorn, I think I will take over. And there's also a question, Buruli. I think this is can be answered very concisely from Buruli's sides, because this is regarding the international registry. So there's a question: if an international registry did not previously have an MRA, what is the procedure for new international registries to be approved to interoperate with SRUC? Maybe that's the first question, and then the last question I will tell after Buruli's answer. Please, Buruli.
Oh yeah, thank you. So we don't need the MRA again in this Presidential Regulation 110, yeah. But for the interoperability, we need, by the regulation, we need the agreement or some kind of a cooperation approach between the two registries. I think that's my answer, Bukim.
Okay. Thank you, Buruli, because of course we are also getting questions as well from others regarding this. I think this would clear up the confusion. Thank you. And then the next question is actually to the investors. Anyone can answer, maybe Ines, maybe Lingmin, or even Nadia as well can answer. So how do investors think about community-based forest carbon projects using standards like Plan Vivo? It's smaller scale, but considered have higher social impact and stronger social safeguard, but heavily underinvested because consideration of high risk and unbankable. Please, anyone, yeah. Fulia or Ines, do you have any opinion on that? What do you think of the community-based forest projects? Yeah. Please,
So,
Ines.
no worries. I guess from a Woodsign point of view, we invest in community-based or community projects that have a community lens on it. Specific to Plan Vivo, we haven't done any in the past. But look, I think that this is a widespread problem in the carbon market on bankability, on risk, and that's something that needs a structural shift and a structural fix rather than a project specific or a standard specific solution. It requires safeguards, it requires government clarity, and that standardization will eventually reach small scale projects.
And maybe I'll just add on to that obviously these project types are critically important, and we also believe in the significance that they bring, not just from a climate perspective, but also from a social impact. However, as Ines has underlined and outlined, it does have some challenges associated to financial viability. So I think as investors, there are a couple of things we need to balance. One, of course, is the integrity thresholds that we spoke about before in terms of CCP eligibility and ratings. I think it's encouraging to see that the Plan Vivo program has now been accepted as part of CCP eligibility. We'll likely want to see the underlying methodologies and project types getting through that process and obtaining the CCP label. And the other point that we'll also want to monitor for is demand signals, because ultimately as investors, we are open to backing project types and providing the project development financing, but we'll likely need to also see the demand from off-takers reflected in the form of pricing that can help sustain potentially the higher implementation cost of these projects that don't benefit from scale economies. So that is kind of the conundrum that we're trying to balance. And thirdly, I do think that there's one aspect that could be helpful in project types like this, especially that starts off initially at a smaller scale, would be thinking about blended finance instruments where commercial capital can come alongside concessionary capital, including grants and other forms of catalytic financing that can help bridge the economic viability until such time they can get to a bankable state with the offtakes in place, and then for maybe also with bank financing and commercial capital over time.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ines and Lingmin, for the answers. I think it has been a fruitful discussion for all of us and for the participants as well. The last session would be the closing remarks, and I would give the floor to Nadia Nair, the Strategy and Development ACT Group, and also our co-chair of ITA's Business Partnership for Market Implementation. The floor is yours, Nadia.
Thanks, Kim. I'll try to keep this as short and concise. I think everyone had really good feedback and insight. But first and foremost, I just want to say thank you to the representatives of the Ministry of Forestry and Environment, Pak Edo and Ibu Ruli, Aita, and of course our panelists for the valuable insights. I'll try to keep my takeaway short, but my key takeaway for today is, which is just re-emphasizing what has been said. What is being really defined here today is not a single regulatory milestone, but rather the consistency placed on progress. And that progress is very simple. It is the building of a gradual establishment of an ecosystem, as Pak Edo rightfully underlined. Now, I do believe that the progress thus far gives us a good, really good example for the region on how policies are being implemented, which is a really crucial parameter for building confidence in the market. And I have no doubt that it is apparent that Indonesia is driving towards a market that's, being operationally built to mobilize investment. As the co-chair of AITA's BPMI, I really would like to reaffirm our commitment to supporting Indonesia and the broader implementation of Article 6, really making this a key priority for the second half of this year. I do believe continued collaboration between government, industry, and international partners, like the discussions here today, will be critical to unlocking the next phase of market development. As Bjorn highlighted, I do believe, being a market participant under ACT Group ourselves, the demand from compliance markets like CORSIA will continue to strengthen. So this only reinforces our confidence that Indonesia is well positioned to play an increasingly important role in the region, but also within global carbon markets. Now, to end it off short and sweet, saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih atas waktu dan perhatiannya. Thank you very much and take care, everyone.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Very, very good closing remarks. I think it all sums up as well what happened in this webinar. On behalf of AITA and also BPMI, thank you very much for tuning in until 9 p.m. Indonesia's time. And I think it has been a very good webinar. See you in the next webinar. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Terima
everyone.
Thank
kasih.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Terima kasih. Have a good day,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a good day. Thank you, Pak Edo, Bu Ruli. Terima kasih semua.